Hello everyone, welcome back to Kirklees Guitar School. In today's lesson I'm going to take you through some elements of The Thrill Is Gone by B.B.King. This is an absolute lead guitar classic that any guitarist should study. So in this lesson I'm going to take you through the intro for the piece, the chord progression for it, and some scales and some improvising tips to take home and mess about with. All of the supporting documents for this lesson can be downloaded for free from the first link in the description. That'll take you to my website, and every tab for every lesson I've ever done can be downloaded there for free. Don't want anything from you, and I highly recommend you go grab it for this one because there's a lot in it. Okay? Now what I've done is I've loaded the chord progression, this one here, which we'll talk about. I've got the chord shapes here, look, for you to have a look at. I've loaded that into my loop station down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that going and I'm going to play the intro for you. And then we'll break it down piece by piece, okay? Off we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Such a good piece, I absolutely love this. So the first page of the PDF looks like this. I'm obviously not going to make you read it all on your screen like that because it's minuscule. So I'm taking through it with 5 lines to get through, and we'll take it through but line by line. So we're in B minor pentatonic. We're using the first position of the B minor pentatonic scale to start with, which we're going to cover in the third portion of this lesson. And we're starting on the 7th fret of the high E string, which coincidentally is a B note as well. That's the key that we're in. We're in the key of B minor. Now I'm going to pick that note once, and then you see that wobbly line. Lots of vibrato. Vibrato is quite hard to get on especially on the high E string and with the index finger as well. I've done quite a few lessons on vibrato, which you can check out. But I want you to give that lasts for the majority of the bar, and then you pick it again just at the last bastion of the bar before you head over to the next one. Let me play that whole line for you actually before I break it down. Slowly. Every opportunity when you're trying to imitate B.B. King, every opportunity where you're hanging around for a second, make sure you're putting plenty of vibrato on it, okay? So we're picking that 7th fret twice. First for a long one, 3.5 beats, and then you're going to pick it one more time before you head to the 10th fret of the same string, and you're going to do what's called a quarter bend. It's just we call this on the podcast a tweak. Just a little bend out of tune before you head back to the note that you just came from. 10-7, 10th fret of the B string, that's an A with the ring finger, and then I'm going to play the 9th fret of the string above that on the G and bend that. So you see how we're walking down the scale, 7th fret with the index finger of the same string twice. I'm going to go back to the 9 but not bend it this time, and roll up to the 9th fret of the D string. Pause the video and get that first portion under your fingers. If you're feeling pretty good, let's move on to the second line of the PDF. Now this bolts, these 4 notes that it starts with bolt onto where we've come from. So you've got the did you hear that? Dun, 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 dun. You just have to forgive me for taking my time to sort of get the new slide up. But we play the 7th fret of the G, tweak it ever so slightly, then ring finger on the root note, 9th fret of the D string, pick it 3 times, and then add plenty of vibrato here. The here to here is one entire lick. So you've got So we've got 7th fret of the 7th fret of the G. We then play the 9th fret of the G, and we bend it, and it lasts for so long it actually bleeds over into the next bar. So that's what this 9 in brackets means. You don't need to pick it another time. It's just telling you that you're hanging on to this note for so long that it actually spills over into the next bar. This is just one long, gradual bend on that 9th fret. And then with the index finger, you're going to do the 7th fret of the B and the high E strings. And then there's a rest here, and that means I don't want you to hang on to this last note, I want you to cut it short. And what that does is it gives the listener a chance to digest what BB's just played before playing this little killer 3 note. So you got 10th fret, we're still in first position minor pentatonic, mind. 10th fret of the of the high E string, do a full bend, bring it back down and play it without bending it, and then index finger on the 7th fret and give it some more vibrato. Pause the video and get that under your fingers if you're feeling brave. Let's tackle this bit. Now this is the sticking point. If you're part of the lead guitar club that comes here and comes to see me at the studio on a Wednesday night, this was caving his head in for a couple of weeks. It looks like there's a lot going on, but it's far simpler than it looks, but it's a real test of your ears, and it's going to sound horrible while you're practicing it, so please be patient. So you've got the... It's quite hard to practice this when you haven't got anything to bounce off. Still in first position, we're going to play the 7th and the 10th fret with the index and the ring fingers. And then as we climb through here, can you see how we bend it half a step, we bend it a full step, we bend it a step and a half, and then we bend it a full step again. So if you imagine this is like stepping up, it steps up 3 steps and then comes back down 1. Now this isn't, I couldn't get Guitar Pro to notate it the way that I wanted it to do it. You're not bending it half a step and coming back, bending it a full and coming back, and bending it 1.5. You're bending it half, pick the note, bend it a bit more, pick it again. Bend it a bit more, pick it again. Bring it back down, pick it again. Can you see how I'm stepping up? Great bending exercise. So you go up 3 semitones and come back down 1. You bend this one twice. This one's really quick in comparison to the others, and then you go back to that 10th fret. So you're actually playing the 10th fret for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, but you're yielding lots of different notes by you bending the string. And then you come back to this 7th fret here, bend it, bring it back down. That's what these two sound like. You've kind of got to be able to sing that melody in your head for it to make sense. Now these two 10th frets that are bent full, I think of these 4 bends all as part of one phrase, and this is part of a completely separate thing. Did you see in between these two? I come right back down and start again. That's the only instance where you do that. Spend most of the time here. This is the one that's going to do your head in. If we're okay, we're going to move on. And I just want you to pay attention to this 12th fret over here, because we're going to have to do a position shift. We're going to have to move up into the 2nd position. And that 12th fret of the B string is played with your ring finger. Now, this 10th fret here, I always want to play the 10th fret of the high E string, and I've just spent the past 10 seconds doing so. I'm really cross that I've got this far and I've done it wrong. It's the 10th fret of the B string. That's definitely what BB is doing. I've triple checked it. I must just have a bit of negative muscle memory somewhere that's making me want to play that note instead of that one. We've just played the 12th fret of the B string in the previous slide. We're then going to go 10, 12, 12 on the high E string. We then got 10th fret of the B string, and then play the 12th fret of the same string with plenty of vibrato. This over here, that's what that sounds like. So you pick it again, bend it up and down, and then in the same, before picking it again, you pull it off. You see how I'm only picking it once. And then you hammer on really quickly to those, from 10 to 12 over there. And then you've got the classic. That second position, we're going to talk about it later on. That's what we call the BB box. I did a whole lesson on it, and it's well worth your time. If you want to get into this kind of playing, there's loads of licks in here that you'll hear BB doing and you'll be able to emulate. I'm bending the 10th fret, just tweaking. I do it twice. And then go to the 12th fret of the B string, and then I do it again. You see how I do 2 tweaks and resolve, 1 tweak and resolve. Once again, let's just see what all that sounds like glued together before we have a look at some chords. It just makes me smile. It's such a cool riff. One thing you've got to be careful of, and I'm going to sort of do it on camera, I'm playing this lovely ES355, but it's got a Bigsby. Bigsby's are great, but they like to go out of tune, and actually, it's behaving itself, which is a rare occurrence. When you're doing lots and lots of bends in quick succession like that, and you sort of playing around with it, your guitar may go out of tune quite a lot. So these little clip-on headstock tuners are great for that. And even if you know you're out of tune, don't sort of suffer with it. Sort it out, because you're doing a little bit, because you're training your ear as well. So it's really important that your guitar's in tune. Right, so that loop that's on the loop station, it's a 12-bar blues with a slight variation. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to refer to the 3rd page of the PDF, which looks like this. Now, some pretty scary looking chords there for the uninitiated. These are called 7th chords, specifically minor 7, major 7 and dominant 7th chords. These are a really common substitution for just generic major and minor chords that give you a little bit more kind of class. Something like, oh, I don't know, D minor. Something like D minor, yeah? You could play D minor 7, you could play D minor 9, and what that does is, lovely, sounded great that, what that is trying not to get too wrapped up in it, it's basically the chord with an extra note thrown in to give it a slightly different flavour, and it was really common for kind of slow blues to use minor 7 chords, and a lot of kind of soul music uses those kind of chords as well. They're just ever so slightly different, sound a little bit more upmarket, and we know the King is no exception to that. So you've got B minor 7 that sounds like this, E minor 7 that sounds like this, G major 7, which is a bit of an outlier, and then F sharp 7. Now what that looks like in the chord progression, it looks like this. So it's a 12-bar blues, it's a 1-4-5 progression, but it's just got a couple of little quirks in it, which I won't go too deep in the weeds on today because we'll be here all day. But what I'd like you to do, if you can, I'd like you to practice that chord that chord progression. But what I'm doing is, I'm playing on beats 2 and 4 of the bar. It's a really common kind of soul and Motown thing to play the chords and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So you see how you got a rest on beat 1, a stroke on beat 2, a rest on beat 3, and a stroke on beat 4. But what I do is, it's called the ice pick. I've talked about this in the podcast before, haven't I? When I play that second beat of the bar, I'm imitating the snare drum of a drum kit. 1, 2, 3. But watch my hand over here. Can you see how once I played the chord, I lift the rhythm off. I lift my fingers off the string, and it creates this kind of like short, sharp kind of stab that we're looking for. If I was to play rhythm guitar on a gig for that, well, I say rhythm guitar, if I was playing guitar on that gig, I would just do beats 2 and 4, and I'd let the bass player do that. You mix the two together, you get... Just my 2 cents on that. But the whole progression, you do 4 bars of B minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, bar 2, bar 3, and bar 4. Bar 5 we go to E minor, to the 4 chord. Back to B minor for bar 7. Then for bar 9 we go up to G major 7 for a bar, back to down to F sharp, B minor 7. And that's sort of what gives it that sort of upmarket kind of flavour of... It's got this kind of jazz sort of... Oh, he says. You know, 2/5. It's kind of almost like a 2/5/1 kind of jazz thing, but let's not get too out in the weeds of that. So what I'd like you to do is, first of all, try and marry those 2 sections that we've spoken about already. Try and learn to play the intro, put the chords into your loop station if you've got one at home, and then try and put them together like I've done there. Because they both start on the same beat. They both start on beat 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Now what I'd love for you to do is, in your loop stations, be able to play the intro along with the chords, and then use the chords as an improvising platform to sort of move on from. So included in the free PDF on the back page, I've listed all 5 shapes of the B minor pentatonic scale. And what that's going to do is, using those shapes, I've just managed to squeeze the first 2 positions on. But what I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to focus more or less, initially I'd like you to focus on the first 2 positions of the scale, and use those scales to practice over over that backing that we've just learned. So what's going through my head when I'm playing that kind of like that? Well, I'm trying to channel as best I can my inner B.B.King, if that's even a thing. What did B.B.King use? He used lots of vibrato at every opportunity. Nice little bends. He spent a lot of time up in the second position in what we call the BB box. More on that in a bit. And think really soulfully. If you took part in our improvising challenge last winter, I'll put a link to that somewhere if you want to learn how to do all this kind of stuff and you feel a bit out of your depth and you want to start again. Go watch that series of videos. It'll really help you. I think the best way to think about it is, your guitar playing is a voice, and you're trying to say something, but you don't want to say too much. If you overplay, it's going to sound like a sack of spuds. Another hallmark thing that B.B.King would do is he'd play octaves up the neck. So we're in the key of B minor to be specific, I would find somewhere where there's a B note, and he'd commonly do, or he'd even go really, it's probably a little bit high up there, but he'd play two Bs together. So I've got 12th fret of the B string, obviously, and the 9th fret of the D string. I could play those notes together, and it gives me this kind of, gives me this cool kind of. He was known for doing that quite a lot. Lots of vibrato, lots of messing about with that. So I want you to have a look at the scales. You don't have to learn all 5 to be able to do this. I'd probably learn the first 2 would be a really good place to start. And use those scales to have a mess around over the top of that chord progression. And what I'd use to practice that is I'd probably play the whole progression 3 times. So I'd play the introduction over the top of it. You know the bit that we learnt, I'd then maybe just let the chords roll around, I'd jam along with the chords. And then for the 3rd time around the progression, I'd do a little bit of improvising. And you could sort of just practice that in a cycle, because that's what I do on a gig. I've got to wear 3 different hats. I've got to play the specific guitar part. Sometimes I've got to play the chords so that the singer can do their thing, and sometimes I get a chance to improvise. And it's a really good kind of quick, efficient way of practicing all 3 of those mediums. So I hope you enjoyed that lesson. Let me know what you think of it in the description below. Tones wise, I'm using a Boss Katana Mark III on the pushed setting. My gain is on 11 o'clock. My volume is on 2 o'clock. Bass on 10 o'clock. Middle on 1 o'clock. Treble on 12 o'clock. I'm using the spring reverb setting at 11 o'clock, and I'm currently running it on the 0.5 of a watt setting. BB used a 335, 355, those kind of guitars. I've got an Epiphone one here that I'm using the neck pickup. Neck pickup on most guitars will get you there. Just don't go too distorted. It comes from the attitude of you playing it as opposed to how much gain you've got on tap. Okay? Go to the website. Get all this stuff off the website. It's completely for free, and it'll really, really help you out with all this stuff, because you're not going to do it all in one go. You're going to want to scribble on it and come back to it later. If you want to learn a little bit more about B.B. King's improvising and the BB box that I mentioned, I'd check out this video over here where I break it down and give you some more tips. I'll see you next week for another electric guitar lesson. Thank you so much.